Start the meeting. Don't have the agenda in front of me.
I gotta bring it. Right here. Bring this up. Okay. Whoops.
I got it.
Okay. Nope, got it right here. Thank you, though.
Call to order, approval of the minutes for April 2025. Is there any changes? Anybody see noted or need to be updated? Hearing none, they'll be accepted. Meetings of April 2025. Any public comments or presentations? Okay, then we'll go into monthly statistics for April 2025.
All right, so our normal calls for service list is included in the package there for you. We had 426 calls for service through April 24th, which was down about 100 calls for service from the previous month. But again, that was only through April 24th. And so the final call count will be a little bit higher than that. For our mental health contacts and our homeless person contacts, the month of April saw 2 mental health contacts and 3 displaced or homeless person contacts. There was no overlap of individuals between those 2 categories. And those are about average for what we see each month. On the next page, I included just for information for you, I included a bar graph that kind of compares us to the surrounding agencies to see where we kind of compare as far as how many homeless and mental health contacts that we're having. So to give you an idea of where we stand with these contacts, if you look at, for example, Buckley PD has had 33 mental health contacts a year to date and 10 displaced persons calls compared to our 22 and 7 respectively to date, year to date. And they've got about, or I'd say maybe half the population that we do. So we're doing quite well as far as the amount of these contacts that we're having as compared to our surrounding agencies.
Have you noticed a difference since Recovery Cafe has been gone?
It has affected us. It's a little bit more difficult for us to put people in touch with resources. The nice thing about the Recovery Cafe was, you know, after the fact, after we speak with somebody, they would come in and they would continuously try to continue talking to them and trying to get them to accept services. Because one of the most difficult things is having somebody actually accept the services that you're offering. So
Right.
And you know, oftentimes they would provide transport to Tacoma or other places where there were more services that we didn't have here. So
Is that what we have to do now?
so yes,
Is if they want to use the services, they have to use the ones in Tacoma.
well, yeah. So many of the services that the Recovery Cafe provided here aren't available anymore, and the closest, you know, is either in Tacoma or a larger agency. And so oftentimes, you know, most frequently they'll refuse services, but when we can talk them into it, you know, we're more than happy to give them a ride to, you know, wherever they need to go in order for them to you know, be able to, you know, receive housing or things like that. So.
So you actually take them to Tacoma, or would you take them to like Sumner where they can catch a bus? But
We prefer to take them to the closest place we can, but oftentimes there's more shelter resources in Tacoma, and so we don't mind taking them to Tacoma if it's going to help them and reduce the amount of contacts that we will have in the future with them with those folks. So sometimes going a little bit farther, you know, today can prevent you know, more contacts and more resources being spent in the future.
and then when that happens, do you make contact with the facility that you're going to?
Yes. So generally, before we transport somebody, we'll contact the facility and make sure that they've got available space or that they can take them. Yeah.
I just don't want us to be on the news saying that we're dumping on what.
Yeah.
Tacoma or something, so it's just like.
Yeah. We understand, you know, that it takes a lot of resources for us to drive somebody out there, and so we make sure that they're able to receive them before we do.
Right.
Yeah.
And then that goes again to why we need more police officers, because when you have an officer going to Tacoma, there's nobody here to react that.
Exactly. Yeah. And which brings us to our training year-to-date statistics here. So we're well on track to receive all of our mandatory hours for the year. May is going to, we have defensive tactics training in May, as well as another monthly training for the rest of the months in the year, which will bring us well above those minimum requirements. CJTC also issued a new training module this month related to tolerance and the Sikh folks. And so we're looking forward to taking that class. It's a 2-hour module online that they have pushed out. So.
So is this? The training hours, like what we're looking at, is that shared with the rest of the force, or is that in your office, or is that somewhere public where they can see
Yes.
this?
Yeah, so they're always aware of how many hours they have year to date. This is our document for internal tracking, which they have access to anytime they need it. But we let them know throughout the year how many hours they have, just to make sure that we add in hours to make sure that they receive those minimum requirements.
I know, I went through the same thing.
Mhm.
I had a ton of training to do every year, but. So what senior leadership would say was like, we want all the training done by September.
Mhm.
Because they knew, there's always, you're not gonna get 100% in September, but at least it gives you a little buffer before you get to December, and.
Yeah, we keep our eye on this spreadsheet to make sure that that nobody's too far behind. Where if it starts to creep up towards the third quarter, we say, hey, we need to get you into some training classes to meet. Yeah.
Right.
And let's see. Following the training, it was the heat map that I put together here, and I included the key this time for you. And I wanted to quickly note that this is also available to you and the public if you go to the communitycrimemap.com. You can actually access a very similar heat map page as this. It's actually the same company that produces the heat map. When I access it through Accruent, so it looks very similar to this, and it gives you the key and everything as well. So that'll give you calls for service as well on the community crime map. And that is all for our monthly statistics.
So what was you probably explained it the first time I looked at this, the 2, 3, 4s.
Okay, those are, that indicates that there's, basically if they put all of the different call types on the screen at once, it would just be one big blob. And so the 2 or the 4, that tells you how many more calls there are underneath if you were to zoom it a little bit closer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You bet.
Nope. That's enlightening.
Yes.
Thank you.
Go on to Title 6.
So we continue to work on Title VI revisions. I've completed my cursory kind of review and recommendations. That's this document has now been given to our prosecutor to take a look at for input. And essentially, what the goal of this is to kind of clean up the language. We have a lot of duplicate crime types. For example, we had adopted RCWs, and then we had also created municipal codes that mirror the same exact language. And so it's much easier if we eliminate creating our own municipal codes when those excuse me, when those codes essentially mirror the exact same elements of an RCW that's already in existence. And so what we've done is we've just adopted as many, basically all of the main chapters of the RCW for the criminal code. And then those individual municipal codes that we've created over the years that are identical to the state code, we've just repealed. But for example, and or kind of cleaned them up a little bit. So for example, we had a law that prevents you from possessing or using silly string in the city. And so what we did on that one was we just modified that because essentially that's littering. And so we just retitled that one littering and then included silly string in the items that are you're prevented from deploying without cleaning up. So it just makes things a little bit cleaner. This way, if there's updates to the state law, we don't have to then come back and modify our own our own municipal codes. So
Yeah, that would save staff a lot of time of
yes,
having to do that, or us having conflicting.
yes, it's
Codes against what we're RCW.
yeah. It's much easier for officers to cite RCW. They prefer to cite RCW. That's how they're trained. And then they're self-updating. If the legislature makes changes, they automatically update for us.
So once this gets approved, then staff is gonna have to go through and some of these municipal codes, delete those because they're.
That's what the exercise with the red lines is. It's
Right.
deleting what we're getting rid of and writing what we're adding, and then we send it to the code publisher. And
Okay.
then they do all that. for us,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
We don't do that.
I wasn't sure how that all worked. So.
Yeah. And then once our prosecutors looked at it, we'll take it and we'll send it over to our city attorney for them to review as well.
And I skipped an item here, so I went back up to the agenda, so we'll go to AB 2514. The automated school zone enforcement RFP.
Okay, so our school zone RFP, the deadline is come and gone, and we had one company that submitted a proposal. And I emailed you that proposal. I've got a copy if you have not looked at that as well, but
Okay.
and overall, we're just wrapping up our individual scoring of the packet by staff. Is it okay for me to comment on it or?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, okay.
We only have one submission, so.
Yeah, just wanted to make sure.
Is this the one that we had been talking with the whole time?
Surprisingly, no. So
Oh, really?
that company decided not to put in for it. I had sent them notice that we had posted it online to let them know that it was available and they declined to enter a proposal, which was a
Wow.
surprise. So this company decided to put in, they're based in Orlando. However, their maintenance folks and their tech folks are local here. Their maintenance folks are in Sumner. They provide services currently for Tacoma, Fife, Milton. So a lot of our surrounding agencies. And they've included examples of the citations. Their cost structure was comparable with the first company that we were speaking with. And we're just clarifying, there's currently one question that came up that we're clarifying regarding the cost. They discuss a kind of a flat rate structure, but then they mentioned that there's that their flat rate structure is for tickets under 400, but then they don't discuss further what happens after 400. So we're trying to just verify with them if that means a per ticket cost or if that's a different value that they have quoted in the.
If it's over 400, you mean?
Correct, yeah. So
Which would only be a ticket over 400 would only be if an officer actually pulls somebody over.
no, this is
In the zone?
the total amount of tickets.
Oh,
if they have lost, it's more.
400 tickets in a given
Month, yeah.
month.
Right, we're trying to clarify. It's
Yeah.
not.
Oh, that's the clarification
Yeah,
is trying to see,
Page
okay.
35, it's just not very clear. It's not clear. They
Yeah.
had one interpretation, I had a different interpretation.
Ah,
It's not-
yeah.
Okay.
They quoted us a main price, and then they talk about a discount being applied for when school is not in session.
right,
And then there's a brief mention, that this discounted price would apply to, take under 400 tickets per month. But then they never talk about what happens after. And so I interpreted that almost as being, then that would be the full price of the initial price they quoted without the discount.
right.
But Scott raised the next question of, well, maybe they're implying that there's a per ticket cost after that.
Half, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good thing to know.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, not that we'll have that many, but very easily could, especially in the first few months.
And that is consistent with what the first company kind of quoted us when they were talking about their cost structure. Was
Right.
that they had a fee per ticket after 400 tickets.
The other nice thing that you don't mind me jumping in.
Absolutely.
Is how they have an algorithm where they prioritize kind of the most egregious offenses in our school zones. Because, as we saw in kind of the preliminary numbers, there's a potential for, we have 20,000 vehicles per day on our highway. We could end up with several hundred tickets per day, especially in the first couple months.
Yeah,
But they have a way of prioritizing kind of the most egregious offenders, so that, because they all take staff time to review it still. And so they'll prioritize the worst of them, so that we can focus on the worst, and maybe, there's a portion of them that we just dismiss because we just don't have the ability to process.
so maybe something like 5 miles over the speed limit, then we prioritize all those
Yeah.
Yeah.
to start with,
Yeah.
and then once that comes down,
We
then,
sort them so that it's like, start at the top, who's 20 over, and then work our way down from there.
okay,
And so maybe everyone that's only 8 miles over, just because we already processed 200 tickets.
Right.
We're
right.
just gonna ignore them and delete them from the system.
Would that be up to us or up to them?
So to lift us. So yeah,
Oh,
so they
okay.
said that this is also great for your staffing levels. And so if you have short staffing, temporarily, you can just call them on the phone and tell them to reduce the total amount that they're capturing in any one point in time. And then
Oh,
they'll reduce those numbers and they'll only take the highest speeders and then work their way down from there. So which is a nice feature.
and you also mentioned when school's not in session, are they still writing the tickets when they're not in session? Okay,
It's only when those beacons are flashing.
okay. Because it sounded like they were going to, if it's a 35-mile-an-hour zone or whatever, then,
Just for school zone and then school zone.
okay.
And as a reminder, the initial speed study that we did was capturing vehicles that started at 5 miles an hour over the speed limit, so 25 through above. Yeah.
Wow, and we had those numbers and it was already 5 miles an hour.
Correct.
Wow.
Yes.
Gee.
Wanted to ask that question, but then I didn't want. And let them know and then.
And we-
5-0.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and we, I believe, 5 miles an hour is a good, leeway to give people, because.
Well, again, when I first moved here, I got pulled over for 2 miles over the speed limit right there, so it's like. Oh. You're doing 37 miles an hour. Really? So I don't think, staff is gonna spend a great deal of time on this, because we only want to kind of look at,
Yeah.
other than some clarifying questions.
Yeah, so staff reviewed it and we scored it like our normal process.
Right.
And I think, I think the determination is that they're qualified to provide the services. And the proposal makes our request, so I think at this point, we have a couple questions to clarify regarding pricing. Which we can get back to the committee, but I think, Chief's recommendation, my recommendation is that we move it forward and see where this goes.
So do they facilitate school zones, other school zones around here?
Yes,
Okay,
Yes, Fife, the city of Fife, and they do a great job of the breakdown of the services they provide for these other cities. Fife, Tacoma, Milton are the first three that immediately come to mind. I think that they did DuPont and Everett maybe.
okay,
as
so
well.
quite a few. It's not like they're new to the area or
Yes,
whatever.
yeah.
Okay.
Starting on page 2.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to go through it right now, but I'll definitely go through it. and
Yeah.
Compare it with the other one,
Yes.
you know, to see what. Probably not a lot of differences. They're all kind of right in there at the same. Just the clarification is pretty important.
Yes.
Um,
And it looks like they also provide a range of services. So for example, some of these cities that they provide services to currently don't include incorporation of those tickets into their court system, and some of them do. So they say that they're fully able to integrate those tickets into the court computers. And so that which, you know, we have the choice of various levels of service from them. So we'll make sure that we try to, you know, get that pricing for what they would come charge us for that portion as well.
One of the big things of the other one, and I don't know yet if one's the same way, but it didn't allow us to go in the hole. In other words, if we weren't producing enough tickets to pay, at least that's the way I understood, maybe I'm wrong at that, but the other one, or at least we were working on that. I don't know if that's a for sure thing, but if the tickets dropped off so much that it was costing us more to have the cameras in place and running, that there'd be no cost or,
That was something that we worked into the RFP
okay,
as a desire of the city. That may or may not have been one of the reasons why the previous company decided not to.
That's what I was wondering.
Submit their proposal, but this company, they chose to kind of describe a pricing plan that gave us a discount in a different area versus a model like that. So
okay.
I'd imagine that these issues are up for, you know, negotiation if a contract were to be
Okay.
negotiated.
I know that seemed to be a big one to me anyway, when you read it, if they were not allowing us to go in the hole. But that might have been why the other one didn't do it too. I don't know. And which may not be doable. I don't know, but I guess we'll see. Yeah. Yeah.
So, so along those lines, say in 5 years and everybody finally gets on board with doing 20 and a 20. Can we cancel this at some point? I mean, or are we locked in?
I think the RFP had an initial term.
No, we requested a like 5-year term. But I would imagine that all of that is up for, you know, negotiation at the time of contract. And so
Doesn't that figure into what the monthly cost is? I would think.
Yeah,
I mean, if you have a 5-year term, that's the term you have to pay for it or pay for that equipment or whatever.
they did express later in the document, you know, flexibility with payment terms and term length and things like that.
So when would this be ready to bring to council?
I think it's. Like, I think we can move it forward, and ultimately the motion would be, we'll have a draft, we can get a draft contract, and then the motion will be authorizing mayor to sign a contract with whatever they're called. In a form acceptable to the city attorney, and then, you know, council can kind of condition that, like, as long as it's meet certain standards, whatever those would be, probably around payments and terms and, ability to cancel, obviously move the zone, based on kind of our changes in the city that we expect over the next 5 years.
So possibly the end of this month, maybe next month then?
I'd like to, because if we want to move it forward and have the program ready for start of school next year, we need to get a contract signed in the next probably a little less than 60 days.
So study session in May or
Yeah,
June, May, June?
probably May, we can have it ready for May, and maybe like another month to bring back a more complete contract, but I think if we.
If we do it in May, then as a committee, there's gonna be questions that we might not be able to answer as the committees or as the committee. So that's gonna put the pressure on you for sure. I mean, you know the system pretty good, but without us being able to review the actual final,
I could also request, I'm sure that they would be more than happy to put on a presentation for councils, because that could be an option if.
Okay.
We can also get it, we can share a draft contract too, in the next week, probably.
oh, okay.
Well, we
Yeah.
got 3 weeks till next study session, so.
Yeah.
Because of this weird month.
Yeah. Yeah,
It plays in our
Okay.
favor in this case.
and it sounds like we need to move it forward, so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
Alright, we'll work on.
Okay, Title 5 and 7 revision.
Okay, so. So we've, we're reviewing both, 5 and 7, but what we talked before, council ready for review today is Title 7, which relates to traffic and motor vehicles. And we've gone through the code, you can see the red lines, I'm just getting this to you now, so we can just kind of talk about it and then bring it back next month. But we've, looked at it, there's a lot of language that's kind of antiquated, like it talked about horses.
maybe they mean horsepower. No.
And some other things, that we cleaned up, there's also, we've added, we've changed, we have to reference speed limits in our code so that we can cite to them, and there's a section kind of in the north side of town that's not explicitly mentioned on the state route, so that's added in here. Let's see here, we can go for it real quick. We revised, so throughout our code, and you'll see this because we're updating a lot of our code over the next 12 months, but I don't know, when someone wrote it 20 years ago, they added like appeal sections and penalty sections kind of dispersed throughout the code. But best practice is to have those in like your Title I or Title II and just reference it so that you don't have different procedures throughout your entire code, because it, gets the city into trouble when we didn't follow the exact procedure for this one because we're used to something slightly different in most
Right.
cases. So, so there's a lot of kind of changes like that, for instance, so you can see in 7-2-8, it's about the back of the third page, is a good example there. And that's related to the appeal period for, I think, impound, on public property. 7-2-14 on the beginning of the 5th page, re-referencing, penalty section back to Title I, where it should clear up to those live. See 7, the bottom of page 5, 7-3-1, we're appealing the language, it's unlawful for a person to ride or leave a horse in the public parks or upon the sidewalks or upon the following section of the streets.
Well, some of that might pertain though, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but
I mean, if somebody's,
yeah, the trail has a designated area though for equines, so we don't want to penalize someone for doing something that the trail is designed for.
right, but what if they ride it into the park?
Yeah, well, I think.
I mean,
there's
I
other-
don't-
Other provisions about, animal control and things like that, that would be
Okay.
appropriate to reference at that.
Oh, okay,
So, yeah, and in our park code, that would probably be a prohibited activity.
yep, right.
There used to be a horse on Oak Street.
On your street,
Yeah.
a horse?
Like a real horse.
Mr. Ed.
Now, it was a small
A
one,
miniature horse, yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, so you have to
and I
have,
think they called it a.
Service horse.
so, yeah, so miniature horses legally can be service animals. They're one of the kind of couple that are in that category, but there's a lot of other animals that people call service animals that aren't, but miniature horses are one, but otherwise. I mean, I don't know if they have all the right paperwork,
Yeah,
but
they since moved, but yeah,
Got it.
I was thinking, no, we did have a horse, it's like.
yeah, but, otherwise, unless it's a service animal, horses aren't allowed. In most neighborhoods. In our animal control code, you have to have a certain, piece of property for you to be able to have a horse. So. But unless we know about it, we're not gonna.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we repealed that code. Some of these codes, which, you know, when I kind of sat down and really read them, I thought were. I just didn't realize we had them in our code, like I mean, I knew we were required to wear bicycles, but I didn't realize every city for instance had adopted code in about the same year in the late nineties. So every city basically in the area has, you know, this chapter 4 bicycle helmet use and regulation code.
Hmm.
So that's pretty common.
That's for minors, right?
I don't know that it's.
Yeah.
Does it talk about you?
Yeah, generally, most of it applies to minors.
I think if you're on a right of way, you're required to wear a helmet. I don't think it distinguishes between a minor and.
So you're saying that I violated the law by letting my bike on without a helmet?
Better walk that baby home.
Bicycle helmet required in bicycle events, helmet required in bicycle leasing or loan.
Yeah,
Well, maybe it doesn't have a prohibition.
yeah, I thought it was minors only.
Okay. Yeah, it looks like 17 and under. So.
I do have a helmet, I just didn't. know.
Sure you
My
do,
wife didn't
sure you
yell at
do.
me before I left.
Just so that the council knows, and it's something that kind of comes up from time to time. Chapter 5, the city does prohibit the parking of construction and commercial trucks in the city of Oregon on right of ways. If you're there like during daylight hours, effectively going to do a job is permissible, but like you can't, if you own a semi, for instance, you can't park it on the city's right of way overnight.
Hmm.
That's prohibited. If we've had people in, I think, your neighborhood, club members for all that own a log truck or drive a log truck and they parked it on the right of way, we'll go out there and make sure they know, and if they don't, then they'll occasionally get a ticket. But that is prohibited, our streets aren't engineered to withstand those heavy vehicles, so.
So we must have got a good job getting that word out because I haven't seen one in a long time. But they used to. park
I
that
see a
bike.
few around town.
Yeah, there'll be a few.
Maybe not the whole thing, but the tractor, you know, or an empty log truck or
Yeah.
whatever.
Couple places like Old Pioneer. The Old Pioneer is a chronic,
Oh, yeah.
it'll show up and
Or,
Yeah.
yeah, at the end of there, and it's just prohibited, so we'll go out and. look
That-
at names.
That road's definitely not engineered
Yeah.
for it. That thing's
Yep.
horrible.
Um. The definition of motorized scooter in 761. We also got a code title for chapter
Wait
10,
a minute,
Yeah.
761,
761, okay?
what about a one-wheel vehicle?
Motorized one-wheel vehicle?
They have them.
Yeah. Instead of just,
Oh, yeah, they do, don't they?
Yeah, and those things can hit some speed too, so. I think you should include one-wheel vehicle as well.
Okay.
You have to have balance too.
So the problem with this definition then is it says a motorized foot scooter means a device with 2 or 3 wheels that has handlebars. Forward that can be stood on while riding and is powered by an internal combustion or electric motor with maximum speed not greater than 20 miles per hour. Those things, usually the one-wheeled ones don't have handlebars.
Well, two-wheels don't either.
some of them
Some of
don't.
them don't, yeah.
So I'm wondering, should you get rid of handlebars?
Yeah,
And this would only apply,
Or
yeah.
with or without handlebars?
and this would apply on city streets, because like, for example, all devices that are propelled by other than human propulsion on the trail, for example, are prohibited. So golf carts and things like that are all not allowed on the trail. This would just be for the roadway. I believe. Correct.
Yeah, exactly, for distance related to right of ways.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, we can update that. Good catch. Title or chapter 10, we had language in our code for a traffic school as an option for people who are violating our traffic codes. But I don't know that we have the staff and haven't ran a traffic school in ages, as far as I'm aware, so. Recommendation would be to strike it. If we don't want to strike it, we can leave it there and eventually look at reconstituting something, but.
Where was that?
Chapter 10. 7-10.
I'm hung up on golf carts are limited to electric motorized.
Where are you seeing, what can you,
781,
781, okay?
because golf carts can also be gas powered.
So that's the language that council adopted in 2011. So it's completely up to. You could just say golf carts with a maximum speed of 8 miles an hour or. Something.
What about, you're limiting it to golf carts, what about, side by sides and stuff like that,
Those would have to be licensed.
right?
You'd be able to drive on.
So they're licensed and have blinkers and all that stuff, they gotta have everything. And I see them driving around on them.
Yeah.
Yes.
So 781 just says limitations. And then you limit golf carts. So what are we limiting golf carts to? I don't see the correlation between limitations, or are we talking about independent driving? And those are the limitations is. If you have a golf cart and you're not paying attention, you're okay.
Well, independent driving is a different chapter, but.
Yeah, chapter 8 is all the golf
Yeah,
cart
chapter 8 is
zone.
golf cart. So I think the limitation is that golf carts are limited currently to electric golf carts. That's the limitation.
Right, when we're authorizing them to operate on the roadway in golf cart zones.
That answers your question.
Yeah, so I guess. I mean, if we're gonna update this, can we also include the gas operated?
Yeah,
I mean,
And if, I think that a gas operated puts it into the category of being like an off-road vehicle potentially, which is prohibited by or allowed,
Well, they're, LPG or whatever they are.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it's not.
yeah, I think that the threshold,
If you go to high cedars, those are all gas.
right, yeah.
And, they don't really hit any speed.
Yeah.
Um,
And if I remember correctly, I think that when this was put into effect initially, the cutoff was the speed, the maximum speed that the golf cart could go, and it had to be under a certain amount. Otherwise, it's considered a motor vehicle, and then there's a bunch of RCWs that apply to it.
Right.
Yeah. And so we'll have to look into that because I think
Yeah,
it had to be under a certain amount in order for it to operate in the golf cart zone that are designated. Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause I think I think the big guy governor on them or something that,
Yeah.
limits the speed, but.
Because then there's a whole RCW section on, off-road vehicles, which can operate on the roadway if the council decides to, enact an ordinance that allows for that. We have not, and so those are prohibited on our streets currently. Off-road vehicles.
Right.
So long as it doesn't fit.
So
Defined as a
the
golf.
so the ones I see driving down the street are
Yes.
just a figment of my imagination.
Those are not.
I'm not saying that
Yeah.
it don't exist. just
Yeah,
saying that they're not supposed to.
yeah, I know. they're not.
Yeah.
We've had that discussion before.
Yeah.
So that brings up an interesting. There's a sign as I leave. I think by the high school Safeway, and it says like. Something about golf carts
Golf cart zone, probably.
coming into town.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then there's one like. You're leaving the golf cart zone, so are we leaving the whole north end?
Yeah, cause it's, we've restricted it to areas that are 25 miles an hour or less is our golf cart zone. Cause for instance, there's no way to get to Village Green.
Yeah.
Or to your neighborhood, Cumberland River neighborhood, without going on a 35-mile-an-hour road. Cause
Right.
golf carts are prohibited on the trail. And so. There's just,
There's technically no way to drive from the neighborhood to Safeway, for example, without breaking the law. Or you could walk it. If you want.
So within Carbon River and River's Edge, you could still drive them. Just
In the
not
neighborhood?
out of those neighborhoods.
yeah, I don't think we would. Not gonna chase you down for driving you off the road.
There just went a motorized
Yeah,
lawnmower. That's what's in here talking.
Kind of chuckle.
Okay, enough of golf. I might have to go golfing now.
So we'll check on the question of gas golf carts and we'll see if we can just create a speed restriction. Yeah. So,
Yeah, because if we're gonna allow electric, we should allow gas, because that seems to be the way people have them going, and I think.
I don't know that we've enforced that part
No.
of the code ever. If it's a golf cart and it's being operated safely in the golf cart zone.
Yeah, nobody's checking under the hood.
Yeah. I mean, and very, very rarely, I mean, at least do I ever see golf carts operating on the roadway in this, like in the downtown core, I think it's very, very few people choose to take advantage of it.
And I see them all the time going down the path to the golf course.
Yes.
Their clubs, it's obvious where they're heading.
Okay.
792.
Yeah, okay, 792. So this is a section of our code that was adopted in the late aughts, 2009. Because we had issues with seasonal fishermen parking. And so this incorporated, this prohibition plus a code that allowed the city to issue fishing or parking permits for certain areas during the fishing season. Went hand in hand together to help combat that. I think it helps a little bit. We still have plenty of problems with fishermen. That will come, they'll leave their garbage and other things, but that's kind of what the purpose of this this code is. And then it's just certain areas, so for instance, September 1st through November 30th, they're going to be enforced this. And on Bridge Street Southeast from Varner, to the east end of Bridge Street Southeast, Daffodil Avenue Northeast, Mill Avenue Southeast, between Hartford and Train, River Avenue Northeast, between Calistoga and Carbon River, Washington Avenue, between Hartford and Southeast Brownway are the areas where we have signage and we'll enforce this evening. And the other thing that we've done is we've, historically, the penalty for this has been $25. And some people just see that as the cost of parking. And so we referenced our back to Title I, Chapter 4, which is our traffic infraction penalty chapter, and so violations of this code will be going up. What would that be, Chief? Would that be like $125?
Something with a little bit more bite, yeah,
Substantial,
yeah,
helpful to
deter.
I'd
encourage
probably
people.
do exactly that.
Yeah.
A couple $100 tickets, and you're either gonna go buy the pass or you're gonna park
Yeah. What's a pass cost?
$10. Well, yeah, exactly.
Figure that.
So that pass, should that also be included in the exceptions if you have a pass?
No, the pass allows you to park in certain parking lots. So, cause like the complaint from the residents is that, especially like the first couple days of fishing season, we had lines of cars going down like Washington Avenue, blocking driveways and other places, into like the, what's the name of here, Chief?
Yeah, that one, yeah.
And same with Daffodil, and so the neighbors came, they lobbied the council and the mayor, and so it's during that time of year, unless you're a resident, you're visiting a resident, parking's prohibited. And so we designated, I think Charter Park, we have a parking lot at the end of River, and then kind of around the Public Works facility is the designated parking area for sure.
So when they get their $10 pass and they're provided that information of where they're able to park.
Yeah. Exactly.
$10.
I know. I don't know, I think Big J's has a little markup, but we get $10 back. So. Oh, yeah, chapter 11, seasonal parking permits, there you go. And,
I think when we issue these, we really need to be clear that this is where they are parking, because I see people parking on Daffodil. And they put their sticker in the window.
Yeah.
But what you're saying is that's still not legal, that's still gonna catch them a ticket.
correct,
Right, yeah, they've got to be in a designated city parking area.
yeah, and in the information that they're given when they purchase the pass, that's included. So.
There's a map, I think, as well. Yeah.
Designated parking areas, not just for the city department, so.
So, for parking on Mazda is okay, but you just can't park on Daffodil,
Correct.
or you could park on Kendall.
Yeah.
So that's what I see happening now.
Unless you're a resident, you can park there if you're a resident, local resident.
Go on.
But no, they're parking there to fish.
Yes, yeah, correct, right, yeah, you can't, as a fisherman, you can't park on those streets.
You can't park on Daffodil, but you can park on Mazda.
Correct, yeah, I'm sorry, yeah, I was just adding in there that residents can park wherever they want, or it's all the time if they're a resident.
If you're within 300 feet of your property.
Correct, yeah, well,
Yeah, but
yes, yeah.
we're not gonna go up there.
Tape measure.
I mean, like you could,
I'm playing devil's advocate here because
well, no,
there is a certain council member that goes down there and parks and goes fishing. And that person is probably not within 300 feet of their home.
but you could park, as a resident, you could park anywhere you want in the city, as long as you're not violating a sign or whatever, and as long as you don't stay there for more than 24 hours.
All right. I don't know if this was clear that this doesn't pertain to residents.
How would I, well, that's a good question. I always thought it did pertain to residents.
Well, no. So, I mean, if we had no parking, then nobody could park there. It would be just abandoned with no cars there. Residents can park wherever they, like, for example, in your neighborhood, you could park on any street you want at any time during the year because you're a local resident.
And you can still go fishing.
Correct. You just can't park in the designated parking spot or designated parking area without buying a parking permit. But you can park on the roadway because you're a resident and you live in that neighborhood.
So I can park on Daffodil and go fishing.
Correct. Because you're a local resident.
That person is safe. Whoever that person might be.
Whoever that person is. All right, moving on, thanks. I think that's,
So is this moving forward then? Have you got it to where it's?
Not yet.
Okay.
The intent with this is just to go through it and get feedback. Suss out questions like this.
Right.
And then I have a couple more questions that I'll get to here in a minute. So. And then chapter 14, it's our speed limits section where it used to be in, chapter 1, and the attorney recommended we shift that to its own separate chapter, so. The only thing that's added is the state route 162 from mileposts 8.05 to 9.13, which is basically Williams to almost to high school. We're adding language that is actually designating that is 35. It's currently posted as that, so it's just having an additional code that we can cite to for infraction.
not that anybody drives that.
Well, and the other end is 30, isn't it?
Yeah, the south end of town.
Right,
About from Kansas out is 30.
right. Same way coming in, right?
Yeah.
At right about Kansas, it's 25. Yeah.
How do we have that portion at 30?
That's a good question. It was. So it's almost always been 30. A couple years ago, it was 157 feet, before city limits, it turned to 50. And then the state wanted it, all of the roadway between 40 city limits and, South Prairie reduced to 45, and so we would have had like 100 and something feet of 50, and so we came back and cleaned up our ordinance. But why is it 30 versus 25 or 35? That's a good question. I don't know the history of that.
Been that way for quite a while.
Well, I know those, I was working with one of the other council members, the county council member that, wanted to have the RVs use 162, but Like, they cannot get to Ording without hitting the 50-mile-an-hour speed limit, and there's no way anybody's going to approve a 35 on 162, so.
Yeah.
Not on that stretch, so.
Okay, and then I had a couple questions, at the last council meeting, I don't remember exactly what the context, how it came up, but there's a question asked about parking in front of mailboxes. And so we did a little bit of research into this. Currently, our code doesn't prohibit parking in front of mailboxes. There's no state or federal law that we were able to identify that prohibits parking in front of mailboxes. However, what appears to have happened is if the city wants to implement a prohibition like that, they adopt a prohibition in their code. And so if we wanted to adopt something, this would be a good opportunity to add it. But it's not currently illegal. It's not something that we can or do enforce.
Has it been an issue
I mean, occasionally we'll get complaints about it.
from the postal service?
From postal service, from residents.
Yep.
I don't know, I'd say it's probably a couple a year.
And
Oh.
I think that there's an argument there for it being interfering with the delivery of mail, but that's out of our hands as far as.
Right, right. Well, that's why I was wondering if a postal service came and brought it up or whatever.
Yeah, that,
We've had one mail carrier complain about it, but the post office hasn't complained about it,
Okay.
so.
Okay. How many of those do we have in the city?
Post or
A whole
mailboxes.
bunch.
Well, it's in the housing developments,
Yeah.
I'm sure, and a bunch.
75 to 100.
Really? Wow,
Yes.
that's a lot.
So could we limit this, so I know like here in the city, every house probably has its own mailbox.
Everyone goes to the PO box
Post office.
in Old Town.
there are some portions in town though where people have individual mailboxes though.
Yeah,
Right.
Like the old phase one of Village Green, I believe is one of them.
So I'm wondering if we could limit this to the. However you wanna call that.
The multi-family boxes. or-
Right, no parking in front of those, because I think that's the issue.
sure.
I don't think it's, if somebody parks in front of your house and they're blocking your mailbox, but it's a right of way.
Sure,
You're only impacting a person,
sure.
but those multifamily, if somebody's blocking that. And from what I understand, the mail person is not supposed to leave their vehicle, that's why they drive on the other side. So they cannot access 30 mailboxes, that impacts a lot of our citizens. So I think if we agree,
Do they have to exit their vehicle if you got 30 mailboxes? I would think they have to exit it, wouldn't they?
no, they have a door that opens right there.
Right, right. I know how they're set up, but
No, they don't have to. I watch the girl do it all the time on mine.
I mean, if you're an individual homeowner and has a mailbox, is it on the street or is it on their house?
Most of them are on the street.
Oh,
They're usually within the right.
And that's what I'm saying. I think a mailbox, it's not such an impact, but so that's why I'm saying if we limit it to the multifamily, you know, where all the new developments have gone to, one stop and then somebody's parked it there, you just knocked out 30 people's mail being delivered to
You
them.
may introduce problems too if you include individual mailboxes with the homeowner parking in front of their own mailbox being cited or ticketed as well.
Right. But that's why I think maybe we just.
how do they deliver it then if
don't.
they don't exit their vehicle? And the homeowner's parking in front of their own thing, they just don't deliver it?
They may not, they may,
I mean, I don't know what their policy is or whatever, but
Well, again, if you're parking in
I
front
don't-
of your own mailbox,
no, I understand that,
but if I'm.
If it's your
parking in
own
front of
or
30
anybody.
People,
but are we discriminating against the people that have individual? I mean, we gotta be careful of that too. Just because you're happen to be one of the 30 boxes. I get my mail, but if you're not one of those, you don't get your mail. So I don't know. I would think that's something we kind of got to look at.
Come on in.
Don't feel like the lone stranger here. Some of us did too.
Oh, that's.
So that would be my only concern.
Sure.
Individual. I didn't know there was that many individual ones in the city.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's,
I think we should have this, and again, if we say all mailboxes, and I think this, like most of the codes that we write, they're really enforced when you get a complaint. So if a homeowner's parking in front of his own mailbox and preventing his own mail from being delivered,
Well, not gonna complain.
yeah, who's gonna complain?
And honestly, if we were to, try to enforce that, and when we run, the officers run the plate and they see that it's the house that's the cars are parked in front of, generally they would either just knock on the door or not cite,
Right.
Right.
issue a citation, yeah.
Well-
Unless you got a general complaint from like maybe the post office.
Correct,
That's
correct.
hey,
right.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, it'd be from the deliverer probably
Well,
because
right, from the post office.
the deliverer would probably tell the homeowner, look, if you want your mail, don't park in front of your mailbox. But I don't think it's usually the homeowner that's parking in front of it. It's somebody else. The homeowner knows if they park in front of it, they're probably not gonna get their mail. Or at a certain time.
Here's another thing to consider. So to enforce no parking areas, you have to sign them as well as have a code to cite to. And so it'll cost us to install no parking signs adjacent to all the
Oh,
mailboxes
wow.
that we wanna.
That,
So there's a real cost to this policy. It's not a free policy. The alternative is that if someone is complaining about it, we could say, well, here's, it's a $300 to have a sign installed, and you're welcome to pay that, and then we can enforce it, but barring that, we don't have the ability to, pay
so then
$1,000 to install a sign.
I would definitely say then don't put it in the code for any of them. Because if you do one, you're gonna have to do them all, and that would definitely be an issue. I didn't think about that, but putting a sign up in front of every one of them.
I think
if
that's
there's that
probably
many.
why most cities don't have this, because of the cost of installing signage.
There's another avenue for enforcement or through the postal service if they were to come out, but I think that their postal inspector enforcement is just few and far between, so that's what
Well, that's what I was gonna say. I might stop by and talk to the postmaster and just say, what's their procedure or policy when it comes to that? Cause I'm sure they run into it all the time.
Oh, sure.
I'm guessing it's a combination of just redelivering it another day or just returning to sender. At some point, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, I mean, we don't have to make the final decision on this, just, I think it's good conversation and good awareness, because I know other council members get questioned about neighbors parking in front of post boxes.
I remember this coming up, I do, somebody brought it in and. You wanna go talk to them?
Yeah, I'll go, I'll.
Okay. You talk to them and then we'll kind of table this for right now and then.
See if I can find out, well, they should know the policy or whatever.
And then, another parking related issue, so at the end of Barner, as you're getting to Witzel, right in front of the old school building there. There's a number of attendant parking signs and, other than local residents. That were apparently installed in the 90s, as far as we can tell. I spoke with former Mayor Paul Rossi about it. There's no prohibition in our code against parking there. And I spoke with the attorney, and what the attorney said is if you don't have it in your code as a no parking area, there's nothing for you to cite to, so there's nothing to enforce. So it's a combination that, like I just said with the, parking in front of post boxes, is that you have to have it in your code and you have to have a sign. So right now, down there, we have a sign, but no code. And so. Kind of, here's the challenge that we're facing right now is. The school meets the minimum parking requirements that council has put in place. For overflow parking, we have city right of way, which is public and available to park on regardless if it's in front of someone's house or not, as long as they're not blocking a driveway. But we have some residents who have options for off-street parking that, for whatever reason, want to be able to kind of maintain the exclusivity of the right of way in front of their properties. Nowhere else in the city do we have that. It's not enforceable, like I say, it's just, it certainly discourages folks from parking there because, if you're a 17-year-old kid, you don't want to get your car towed.
And they've essentially just purchased their own signs and put them up, or they were provided
Well,
at some point in the past.
There's a house right there that has the cones out there and says no event parking. That
Yeah.
it's on public right of way, so
I think
if-
that's actually that's the manner they put that out there because they're not allowed. We prohibited them from using kind of some of the local streets for event parking
oh, okay.
as a condition of their business license because they don't provide adequate off-street parking.
Mhm.
So they've got to self-police that.
Okay, I just saw the cones out there
Absolutely.
and
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
thinking, well, there's
Yeah.
somebody that
Yeah.
put it out there and said, I don't want you parking here.
Yeah, no, absolutely, that makes sense, but, so I think
Okay.
the question that we have for council is, one, we can. It's what, in talking with former Mayor Paul Rossi, it was a complaint they received, and the solution was just put up some no parking signs. They're not enforceable, maybe they did in the 90s enforce it. We can't enforce it as far as we can tell. We can add it to the code, but I think the question becomes, if we add it for them. Are we gonna start getting requests to add other no parking signs in front of other people's houses? And again, the right of way belongs to the public, not an individual house. And,
Can you come explain that to my wife?
well,
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of people that don't understand that don't understand that you can park, there, and they will let you know that if you park there.
YouTube has a million of those videos.
We don't want to get in a habit that we got to put a sign up everywhere too, and especially if we don't have a code for it. Why are we spending the money putting a sign up?
Yeah.
It's to help that individual have a better feeling about people parking in
Sure.
front of their place.
yeah, but I think the risk is like, you get into if it's good for them, it should be good for everyone else.
Exactly.
And that's a public space that you're effectively giving them exclusive access to, which the Constitution has a prohibition against gifting of public funds and.
Right.
That would kind of, that's a public service, the right of way, parking the right of way, so, I think.
I would say pull down the signs.
I'm surprised we haven't seen that more already. And maybe we have, I don't know, but somebody drives by, sees a sign, says, I want one of those in front of my house.
Well, we
Yeah.
had
there's
people
a
try to
few.
do that. I mean, we
Yeah.
had at the corner of Garner and Bridge here, we had some guy that put rocks out in the right.
Yes, yeah, right. Where you couldn't park there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
so we went out
I've seen plants, I've seen a lot
Yeah.
of different stuff.
other places with trees and plants that people have put there, and so we're working on
Cleaning that up.
getting rid of that, but it's also like, well, some of these much more residential areas where there's plenty of street parking. It's like, how much effort are
Right.
we gonna put into that until there's a problem, so.
Yeah.
And the officers know which ones are enforceable and are not, because the signs have to be regulation signs are regulation signs, and they have to be a certain height and everything. And most of the ones that people purchase themselves are either just a sign on a tree or things like that, or they're really short.
Yeah.
They're not enforceable if they're too short.
Sandwich board or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, because one of the gentlemen from the end of Varner, he came and spoke at council a couple weeks ago, I don't know. I think Jeff is not very, I don't remember his problem, I just said it, so.
I remember it coming in.
So, but yeah, we're happy to go and remove those signs, have a conversation with those property owners, letting them know. Where the council's at on it, so.
Well, that there's no code to enforce it. I mean, that's huge.
There's a public need in that area.
Yeah.
Because of the school, and I know it is an inconvenience in some ways for them, but it's also a public street, so.
Right. And I know those kids, I've got grandkids that drive to school and they're in a panic of where to park, or I told them park at my house and walk. Whoa,
Yeah.
that was a wrong thing to say.
And I,
Yeah,
and
I
we
think-
had, I don't know if Chief was there, but I know, Director Gunderson and myself have had discussions with the superintendent. Encouraging him to encourage his students, like, if you're close enough, walk to school. If you're in the bus area, ride the bus. I mean, there's several good options if you don't want to
Get a tow.
get towed or don't want to go in a car or,
Right.
don't want to park on the street.
Or drive around blocks and blocks looking for a parking spot.
Yeah, or be late. Yeah, there's good options to get to school timely, so. It's just kind of the predicament that they're in and we're in, so.
And Safeway's enforcing their. no
And
parking.
Safeway's starting to enforce their rights as a private property owner. It's not Safeway, for anyone who may listen, is not a public parking lot. Another thing that the school is doing is at the middle school, they have extra parking because of the stadium. That they don't necessarily use during the school day. And it's under 2,000 feet from the high school to the middle school, and so. There's also starting to encourage kids, if they don't want to park on a street, you can park at the middle school and then walk. A couple minutes and. Perfectly reasonable, so.
Yeah, I think if we have signage up that we don't have the ability to enforce, then the signage should come down. It's unfortunate to the homeowners that,
Don't be surprised if those homeowners come to the next council meeting and saying, we need a code or whatever, but that's their,
Sure,
Yeah.
I think there's probably a likelihood that they will, but I think
Yeah.
at that point, it's up to council.
right.
If you think it's enough of a problem that they're losing a right because of parking, then.
And they may try to, put the sign on their property and say, well, it's on my property, but that's unlawful as well, because it
Right.
can't, be visible by from the street.
Yeah.
So, but I think, the thing I reiterate is they have adequate off-street parking at those residences. They're not lot line to lot line properties, so.
I mean, during the Daffodil Parade, you see people put stuff up all over, no parking for event or whatever, everywhere. Yeah, I mean, from what I see on Eldridge, oh.
That would be
And
surprising.
I mean, people park it. Most of them, if they're gonna park, they come and ask, which is great, but they don't have to. It's city property. But I see people putting cones up and all kinds of things to
Interesting.
keep people from parking there.
Have you ever seen anybody trying to charge people to park?
that's what I was.
No.
hoping.
Oh, yeah.
I have not.
Right, it's like,
Like
Yeah.
Puyallup, during the Puyallup
Yeah,
Fair.
yeah. I mean, if it's their own property, yeah, but.
Yeah, no, I have not.
well, that's kind of gone away though.
Is
I
it?
think the city incorporated some law that it's a business now.
Must be this next year.
And
No, I
Oh, so
think
you
it was
have to have a
last year.
business license as well,
Right.
so they're getting a cut.
Yeah,
is what it is.
so I was wondering about that during the daffodil parade.
Mhm.
It's like, I don't see anybody like holding up a
Yeah.
sign in the front yard.
You want to be quiet or somebody will pick up.
Okay, got it. So we will not incorporate anything regarding Varner. We'll go ahead and remove those signs because there's no appetite to add code and they're currently unenforceable. And as far as we know, the city placed them, so they'll be gone.
Yeah.
So, and we'll talk with the residents in that area as well, so that.
Yeah, because I think the reason the gentleman came in was he was saying that nobody was enforcing the signs that were there.
Correct.
And, well, now we know why nobody's enforcing it. We don't have a code, so therefore let's remove the confusion and take out the signs and then.
Yeah.
He knows where it stands now.
How do we control? I just noticed the other day on Eldridge, coming from Safeway to Calistoga. Arrow Lumber's been parking their trucks like right next to the road. When you come up, you can't see past them. You got to almost pull out on the road a little bit to see if anybody's coming out of town.
So I know that the police have been investigating that.
Oh, okay.
If you read our commercial vehicle parking, technically.
Oh.
That's an illegally parked commercial vehicle, so.
Okay.
I literally just had a conversation with Officer Vaughn yesterday about it. He asked me when I stopped in to say hi. And pointed him to this section of the code, so I suspect the conversation is coming to ask them to park that in the yard.
I kind of mentioned it to him one day when I was in there, said, man, you guys are making it hard. Sometimes they parked it on the other side, but those trucks can park inside their gates and be fine, I would think, but
Well,
good. I'm glad that's because it's hard to see there.
Don't we have a code that you can only park so close to a corner too?
Yes, that's the state law.
Right.
Yeah, within 30 feet of an intersection or a hydrant or a traffic control device or a crosswalk. Those are all things you can't park near.
Okay.
All right, so we'll keep cleaning this Title VII up and bring it back next month.
Good job.
Thank you.
Code enforcement, community development.
Code enforcement, community development.
Yeah, so Kim wasn't able to attend today, and she just wanted me to pass along the progress that we've made on our efforts to try to clean up those abandoned cars. As part of our spring cleanup event here. In mid-April, we went out and we tagged vehicles that appeared abandoned. We focused on vehicles that had moss growing underneath them and that obviously had not moved in quite a while. We ended up tagging over 30 or 35, maybe even close to 40 vehicles in that multi-day period. And we've now turned around and so what we saw is an immediate change. We had many of those vehicles move, most of them moved. And have moved since, and we've only had to impound, I think it was a handful, less than 5 since tagging those vehicles. And our code enforcement officers continuing to contact those folks to either impound the vehicles that have not moved, that are on the list still, or have them moved by the registered owners. The day, so I was helping out personally on that, the day that we were tagging vehicles, and I drove down Kansas on this particular day, the one that we had advertised. And it was, I think, the first time I've ever driven down Kansas where there were no cars parked on the sides of the road. There was only one car, and it was obviously it moved every day. So I was surprised to see that there were that many that had been moved. But
Well, they start seeing somebody getting towed and it's like, whoa,
yes, yeah.
I guess we better do something.
And so we've had really good results with that.
Good. Well, that's going to become an issue when we start work on Kansas anyway, isn't it? I mean, that's going to be.
Yeah.
Crazy.
We've now started our kind of on a side project focusing on the RVs and things that are showing up through the warm weather. Every year we those are problematic as well. We get complaints. So
Yeah.
I think the RVs, I mean, I think we had this discussion before. It's kind of like you see somebody like loading it up or unloading it, you kind of got an idea that, but when it sits there for weeks at a time, it's just, those are the nuisance problems. And then again, when they're parking within 30 feet of a corner,
large
like
boats.
the situation around my house is exactly what Don was talking about. You can't see the car coming, or the people driving down Rydell are notorious for cutting that corner. And then if there's suddenly a car, because there's been some cars there coming the other way, there's no room for maneuvering, without striking, people just panic. But anyway, so.
I do know that Director Gunderson was sending Kurt out to place some flyers. There's 3 RVs parked on Rydell this morning. So, one of them has its cords across the sidewalk. So, it makes it really difficult to, and so I was driving towards the public workshop and someone came out from in between the 2 RVs that are parked really close together and didn't see me, and we almost got into an accident this morning, so I called her and she was gonna send her out to remind those folks that they cannot, and they're literally like 1, 2, 3, all in a row, so big ones.
Yeah, they really are a hindrance to traffic. I mean, you can't see around them, you can't see through them, and all of a sudden, there's a car in front of you, and
Yeah,
the roads aren't that wide to where you can maneuver safely and like, oh, sorry, so. Thank you for policing all that.
No problem.
And AB 2515, police staffing study funding. I think that's ongoing. I think we kind of took that on into the finance committee now, or
Well, that's,
there'll be a discussion in that committee.
And I included that just for tracking the.
Just trying,
Right.
yeah, so.
yeah, I mean, that's a big part of it. And that's why we decided to tackle it first, try to get that going. It's a big one.
Yes, yes. Yes.
And number 10, request for new business.
How are the electric vehicles working?
Excellent, excellent. so
All right.
far. Yes, we haven't had any issues with range. So long as they're being plugged in when there's downtime, they charge back up and they're ready to go. So they've been working out quite well. So far.
Good.
I heard yours got a new back window.
It did. Yes, it got shattered out while I was at training in Puyallup downtown at the Volcano Summit.
On purpose?
I don't know. I honestly, I don't know. So I got into it. I didn't notice it when I was getting into the car, but as I was driving back, I looked at my rearview mirror and because I heard the sound and it was glass falling out of the back window. So I don't know. I don't know if I'm assuming somebody just smashed it in the parking lot when it was there, but
Well,
nothing was taken or anything. But
Yeah, that's what I was.
they didn't want to go that far.
apparently, yeah.
It's not a Tesla, is it?
No, but it is an EV, so that was.
Yeah, that's true,
We had to
that's
discuss
true.
that as well. Maybe that was just somebody was.
Yeah.
So that ended up, from what I understood, was the cost to replace it was less than our
$1,000.
deductible,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did. pay.
It's usually the way it is.
Yeah.
Insurance companies have a way of doing that.
We have I think for our vehicle, we have for vehicles, it's
It's $1,000, yeah.
thousand for like buildings, we have a fairly high deductible, I think it's $25,000. Cause it saves us quite a lot in our annual.
In premiums, yeah,
We've got
yeah,
healthy reserves, I'd rather save money than.
yeah.
Go to the insurance company.
With vehicles, $1,000 is nothing.
Yeah.
That could be a bumper,
Yeah.
that's the problem.
Yeah.
So,
Action items, roundtable review.
So for action items, we'll bring the automated school zone cameras to the study session. Title 6 revisions, chief, are they moving or?
Not quite yet.
Informational autonomy?
Yep.
Same with Title 7.
Still some work to do.
Yeah, staffing study is just informational, yeah, so I think that's what we've got.
so just school zones.
School zone enforcement.
it's the only thing going.
Like that, I guess this meeting is adjourned at 10:31. Thank you.
Thanks. Sorry, I was late getting here. Grandson came this morning and his car was